Okay, so picture this, you're at a friend's house for a weekend getaway. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're soaking in the hot tub,
Yeah.
enjoying a glass of wine under the stars. It's supposed to be, a relaxing escape,
Right.
right? But what if that idyllic scene turned into a nightmare?
Oh.
What if one of your friends ended up
Oh.
dead?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened on Mother's Day weekend back in 2019. A well-respected University of Georgia professor, Marianne Shockley, was found lifeless in a hot tub.
Oh my gosh.
So, open and shut case of accidental drowning.
You would think so, right?
Not quite.
Yeah.
The circumstances surrounding Marianne's death are anything but simple.
I mean, so captivating about this case is like the intricate web of relationships and the baffling evidence that emerges. We're dealing with a cast of characters with secrets, a shocking suicide that throws everything into question, and a trial that leaves us with more questions than answers.
Right.
Buckle up, because this deep dive takes us through some unexpected twists and turns.
All right, so let's break down this tangled web, starting with our three key players. First, we have Marianne Shockley herself, not your typical buttoned-up professor.
Right.
She was a world-renowned entomologist and a leading voice in the fascinating world of entomophagy.
Yeah, entomophagy, for those who haven't encountered the term, is the practice of eating insects.
Right.
And Marianne wasn't just studying bugs, she was advocating for them as a sustainable food source.
Wow.
Imagine the kind of personality it takes to convince people that crickets and mealworms could be the future of fine dining.
Yeah.
She was known for her adventurous spirit, her charisma, and a true zest for life.
Now, enter Marianne's boyfriend, Marcus Lillard.
Okay.
He's described as charming, but he also has a past drug conviction and, as we'll soon discover, a rather intriguing interest in erotic asphyxiation.
And that raises a critical question. What role did this practice play in their relationship? Was it a mutually agreed upon part of their intimate life, or was it a red flag hinting at a darker, more controlling side to Marcus? We need to explore this aspect carefully as we delve deeper into the events of that night.
And last but certainly not least, we have Clark Heindel, the host of this ill-fated gathering. A former psychologist with a revoked license, Clark was known for his spiritual guidance and these weekend retreats that some found a bit unconventional.
It makes you wonder, how did Clark's background and reputation influence the atmosphere that night?
Right.
Was he a genuine spiritual seeker, or was there something more to these gatherings that might be relevant to the events that unfolded? We need to consider the context of this party as we examine the evidence.
Okay, so picture the scene. A small party at Clark's house in Milledgeville, Georgia.
Okay.
It's a warm Mother's Day weekend, and the mood is relaxed, maybe a little too relaxed. Alcohol is flowing, marijuana is being passed around, and there's even talk of ecstasy being involved. This isn't just a casual get-together. There's a sense of pushing boundaries, of exploring altered states of consciousness.
And that's a crucial detail to keep in mind. The combination of drugs and alcohol can have a profound impact on judgment and decision-making.
Right.
It can create a volatile mix where inhibitions are lowered and risks are taken without fully considering the consequences.
According to Marcus, he left Marianne alone in the hot tub to gather some firewood. And this is where things start to get really strange. He claims he got lost in the woods.
Lost for a significant period of time, which immediately raises red flags for investigators. How do you get lost gathering firewood in a familiar backyard? And what was he doing during this time?
Yeah.
It's a detail that demands further scrutiny.
Eventually, Marcus returns to find Marianne unresponsive in the hot tub. But here's where things take a truly dark turn. 2 hours pass before anyone calls 911.
And that delay is a huge red flag in any potential crime scene. Why the hesitation? Were they trying to cover something up? The responding officers also observed some peculiar behavior from Clark, adding another layer of suspicion to this already puzzling situation. And just when you think it can't get any stranger, a bombshell drops.
Oh, wow.
A shotgun blast rings out from inside the house.
Oh, no.
The officers rush in and find Clark, dead by suicide. He leaves behind a note that both apologizes for Marianne's death and at the same time intensifies the suspicion surrounding the entire incident.
That's a chilling detail. So
Yeah.
The one person who might have had crucial information about what happened that night is gone, leaving behind a cryptic note that only deepens the mystery. It feels like we're caught in a real-life Agatha Christie novel with secrets and motives lurking around every corner.
Exactly. And as the investigation unfolds, more disturbing pieces of evidence start to surface. Marcus's ex-girlfriend contacts the police with a truly shocking claim. He had a history of choking her during sex, sometimes even to the point of unconsciousness.
Whoa, hold on. So it's not just a tragic accident. Now we have allegations of a disturbing pattern of behavior. This definitely paints Marcus in a different light.
It does, and this new information cast a dark shadow over Marcus's claims that Marianne's death was accidental. It raises serious questions about his tendencies and whether they might have escalated that night, leading to a fatal outcome.
And to make matters even more complicated, the medical examiner rules Marianne's death a homicide by strangulation. This seems to align with the ex-girlfriend's account, right? It paints a rather grim picture of Marcus.
Yes, but it's important to remember that correlation doesn't always equal causation. While the medical examiner's report certainly points towards strangulation, we have to consider all possible scenarios before jumping to conclusions. The investigation is far from over.
Okay, so we have conflicting accounts, a suspicious suicide allegations of choking, and a homicide ruling. What happened next?
The case goes to trial, and the courtroom becomes a battleground of conflicting narratives. The prosecution builds its case around Marcus's alleged choking tendencies, presenting testimony from several of his ex-girlfriends.
So we're not talking about just one isolated incident here. Multiple women come forward with similar stories, which definitely establishes a pattern of behavior.
It does, and the prosecution used this to portray Marcus as someone with dangerous, potentially uncontrollable desires. They argued that his fascination with erotic asphyxiation, combined with his past drug use, painted a picture of a man living on the edge, someone who might be capable of taking things too far.
But I'm guessing the defense had different interpretation of events.
Absolutely. The defense argued that some of these instances of choking were consensual, a part of Marcus and his partner's exploration of their sexuality. They emphasized that not all BDSM practices are inherently abusive or dangerous as long as they are conducted with clear consent and safety precautions.
Okay, that makes sense. Consent is key in any intimate situation. But did the defense address the lack of damage to Marianne's hyoid bone? You know, that bone in the neck that often breaks during strangulation? Wouldn't that suggest it wasn't a forceful strangulation, making it less likely that Marcus, who was younger and stronger, was the one who killed her?
That's a sharp observation. And you're right, the defense seized upon that very detail. They argued that if Marianne was indeed strangled, it might have been done by someone older and weaker like Clark. They suggested that perhaps Clark, in a moment of panic or guilt after accidentally harming Marianne, might have taken his own life to escape the consequences.
But wait, Clark is dead by suicide. How can he be a suspect if he can't stand trial?
You're absolutely correct. He can't be officially considered a suspect. However, the defense wasn't trying to convict Clark. They were aiming to create reasonable doubt about Marcus's guilt. They were highlighting the possibility that another scenario, even if it couldn't be definitively proven, might explain the events of that night.
So what about the drugs and alcohol that everyone was using that night? Did that factor into the trial at all?
Absolutely. The defense emphasized the dangerously high temperature of the hot tub, which was a scorching 107 degrees Fahrenheit. They argued that combined with the mix of drugs and alcohol in Marianne's system, the hot tub itself could have contributed to her death. Imagine being in a hot tub that hot, heads add in the disorienting effects of drugs and alcohol. It seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's a really compelling argument. I know that even at normal temperatures, soaking in a hot tub for too long can make you feel lightheaded and dizzy. Throw in a cocktail of drugs and alcohol, and it seems like a very real possibility that Marianne could have passed out or experienced some kind of medical emergency.
Precisely. The defense was essentially presenting an alternative theory that Marianne's death could have been a tragic accident fueled by risky behavior and a toxic mix of substances, rather than a deliberate act of violence.
Okay, so we've got conflicting accounts, a suspicious suicide allegations of choking, and a homicide ruling, and now the defense is proposing that it was all a tragic accident. What did the jury ultimately decide?
After deliberating for less than an hour, the jury found Marcus not guilty on all charges.
Wait, less than an hour? That seems incredibly fast. Were they really that unconvinced by the prosecution's case?
It certainly raises questions about the strength of the prosecution's evidence. While they presented a lot of circumstantial evidence, it seems it wasn't enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Marcus was responsible for Marianne's death. The lack of definitive physical evidence, the ambiguity surrounding the events leading up to her death, and the possibility of alternative explanations all contributed to the jury's decision.
So does that mean Marcus walked free? Did he just get away with murder?
Not quite. While he was acquitted of the murder charges, he was found to have violated his probation due to drug use that night. So even though he was found not guilty of murder, he still ended up behind bars.
Wow, what a twist. So despite the not guilty verdict, he's still serving time. This case really is a roller coaster ride of emotions and legal complexities. We've got a renowned professor dead in a hot tub, a suspicious suicide, a boyfriend with a penchant for choking a trial that ends in a not guilty verdict, but still lands the defendant in prison. And with Clark's suicide, we're left with a gaping hole in the narrative, a void of unanswered questions.
Right.
Did Marcus's fascination with erotic asphyxiation escalate to murder, or was this a series of unfortunate events culminating in an accidental death? Did the truth die with Clark? Or are there pieces of the puzzle still out there waiting to be discovered? It's a chilling thought. Some mysteries may never be fully solved.
It certainly is. This case serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of human relationships, the blurred lines between pleasure and danger, and the potentially devastating consequences that can arise from substance abuse.
We also see how a seemingly straightforward death investigation can quickly spiral into a web of conflicting evidence and unanswered questions. It makes you wonder what really happened that night in Milledgeville. Did the truth die with Clark? Or are there pieces of the puzzle still out there waiting to be discovered? Really is a haunting thought. It's cases like this that make you realize how quickly a seemingly ordinary gathering can take a dark turn. It makes you question everything you think you know about the people around you.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of open communication, setting boundaries, and being mindful of the risks involved in certain behaviors, especially when substances are involved.
So where does this leave us? What can we as listeners take away from this tangled web of events and unanswered questions?
I think this deep dive has given you a glimpse into the many layers of this case, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a wealth of information out there, court documents, interviews, expert analysis. We encourage you to dig deeper, explore the evidence, and draw your own conclusions. What do you think happened? Was justice served? Or did a killer walk free?
It's a question that lingers long after the trial concludes. And while we may never know the full truth of what happened that Mother's Day weekend in Milledgeville, this case serves as a powerful reminder that even behind closed doors, in seemingly safe and familiar settings, darkness can lurk. It's a reminder to be aware, to be cautious, and to always trust your instincts.
Well said. And as always, dear listeners, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep into the mysteries that surround us.